Don't be afraid to be that change you wish to see. Don't let what has happened in the past or historically keep you away from the goals that you have and the dreams that you have. You can still go forth and chase what it is that you want and make sure that you are living the life that you want to live without having any fear that people are going to stop you, because there are people in the positions that you want to be in who look and sound and talk just like you.
Welcome to The Scaries, brought to you by Razor Co. I'm Sky.
And I'm Talitha. We are proudly broadcasting from Treaty 4 territory here in Regina. In each episode, we tackle the alarming, inconceivable, questionable, shocking, and scary statistics relating to, impacting, and intervening with the lives of women and girls worldwide.
You'll hear the scary truth, take away tools and tips, and learn about what you can do about it. And really, The Scaries is an opportunity to raise awareness and use our voices as women and supporters of women to make some real change. All the opinions and stories shared on this podcast are purely our own or our guests, and this is for entertainment purposes only. So please be aware that the things we'll be sharing could be triggering to you, so please listen with caution.
As straight, cisgender, white, able-bodied settler women, we are aware of the privilege that we have, and we want to use this platform to spread awareness about the scary reality women from around the world face in different life situations.
Why?
Because sometimes nothing is scarier than being a woman.
Good day to you all. So I don't know about you, but I'm freezing, and where we are, it's like minus a million, and we had a really mild Christmas. So it's like
it's actually minus 40. And so like if you're in the States or anywhere else in the world, minus 40 is minus 40.
Yeah.
It's like minus 40.
It is chilly.
Anyways.
That's why we're so, hence the outfits here. But we have some really exciting topic to chat about today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I think you'll all be very entertained by. And to kick us off on that note, I heard a very interesting factoid recently about, or specifically for the Swifties out there. I know there are many. I do not identify as a Swiftie, but there are many.
I'm like
out
a
there.
Swiftie adjacent, I would say. Like I respect. I'm not like a diehard, like gonna go to like every Eras tour that ever existed. Like I happily watch the movie though.
Oh yeah. And I'm like, I like Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's cool. And like, if I got a free ticket, 100% would go, but
totally.
I'm just not something to like wait in line. But anyway, I digress.
We digress. Yeah.
The factoid is right now, Taylor Swift is one of the highest paid women entertainers in the entire world.
Oh, hot
right now.
diggity. I believe that.
So according to a recent analysis from Bloomberg released in October 2023, Miss Swift has officially entered the 3 comma club. So she's a billionaire.
The 3 commas.
And
I would
like,
love a couple
she's
commas.
Our age, like she's in her 30s.
She just turned 34.
Yeah.
Yeah. In December.
Yep. So, I mean, I haven't seen her bank account. I can't confirm or deny this is exactly true, but I'm pretty sure it is. We've seen it a couple different sources. And this is all calculated based on her real estate portfolio, her music catalog, her ticket and merchandise sales, her music streaming earnings, her music royalties. So I believe it from all of the things in her last tour selling like crazy. This is all sitting around $1.1 billion is where she's at for net worth. So along with the Eras tour that broke the internet a couple times.
Literally.
Tay-Tay is on a lot on people's minds, and not only for her music, unfortunately.
Yeah.
She's angered the Chads, the Brads, the Dads by dating Travis Kelce. Is that how you pronounce?
Yeah.
Okay.
She put him on the map, and I will not hear otherwise. No, apparently he's like a very famous football player before they started dating.
We don't know. I don't follow football, so I'm like,
but
is Kelsey? I don't know.
It is Kelsey.
And I'm definitely not I don't follow a lot of this popular culture stuff, but clearly we do our research. So she's not everyone's biggest fan for those reasons. And as of recently, January 9th, Fox News suggested that she's a psyop. What that is? PSYOP. because she posted the link to register to vote in the U.S. presidential election on her socials.
Okay, wait. That's like psyop sounds like a robot
Cyclops?
or something. Yeah, like that's what I'm thinking of. Like a one big old like eyeball. Like what is that? Why?
So it's actually basically allegedly that she has been chosen, or she's working with the government or like military ops to influence people's voting habits, right? So they're saying this isn't, we don't know if this is a fact or not. I mean, she just literally said go vote, which doesn't tell you for who. I mean, she's known to align to a certain party.
Yeah.
But just go vote. But anyway, people are like, ooh, she's working with the government. She's being paid to sway people's votes because she has a major following, obviously. So I don't know about that. But anyway, you can make your own decision there.
As if.
But at the end of the day, she is huge. Like you can't go past any news article in the last month without seeing her name a couple times. So yeah.
No, she's honestly done very well. The fact that she's 34, I'm like, what have I done?
You've done a lot.
I know. And I mean, can't compare. I have not dedicated myself to being a musician. So there's that. I don't know why I think I should be a famous musician. But anyways, but she also wasn't the only one who has done a lot of really great things this summer. And I just want to pay tribute to our Lord and Savior, Beyonce, because Beyonce had a really fantastic summer as well. Her apparent net worth, again, haven't seen the bank account, but I can assume is around $540 million, according to a June 2023 Forbes article. And I imagine that didn't even really take into account like the whole Renaissance tour and like the movie and everything that came after that.
Look who she's married to. I mean, that's not the whole household income. I don't think.
$1 billion on the elevator.
Probably.
Yeah. But the thing that bothered me the most about all of this news this summer was that the media pinned Taylor and Beyonce against each other. And like from CNN, like I was looking up these articles from CNN to Forbes, it seemed like every media outlet had something to say about these two and like comparing them and like who's better and like what everything else. And then when they went and like Taylor Swift and Beyonce went and shook everyone to their core because then they supported each other. Right. And the media was like, oh my God, and like freaked out even more and had like a huge field day about it. It was absolutely insane.
Why is it so mind-blowing that women are supporting each other and like
this is the thing.
Collaboration over competition.
Like every single day.
This is why we're in the situation we're in with so many mean girls and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're perpetuating this behavior.
Totally. Yeah, I 100% agree. But yeah, okay, so not to go into a tangent for a minute, but I want to go on a tangent for a minute. This is just a tale as old as time. Like when multiple women are in positions of power or fame or notoriety or like have sway over something, it seems like this narrative bubbles up that there can only be one. Like you have to compete against each other. So for instance, like from TV shows like Bridgerton and movies like Mean Girls, I mean, that's a great movie. But they reinforce the idea that there's typically only one woman who gets the guy, and there's one who can rule the school, and there's one who's considered the best. Like there can only be one. The rest of the female characters are often then portrayed as like the competitors or like the sidekicks. Like they're there to just like support the star. But consequently, then what we see on the screen is tend to how we like shape our perspective in life. 100%. And so then we're like, oh, like there can only be one. But for Taylor and Beyonce, these two literally could not be further apart in terms of like artists. Like if you
different genres,
everything. Like some research I saw said, you know, like, and I don't know this, I wouldn't say like I stand behind this 100%, but like Taylor represents like white feminism and like has like a very specific, you know, like she goes to like the down home, like country girl kind of thing. Whereas Beyonce represents like black feminism and like black power and like all these other things like the black experience. And like, it's so different.
Different target audiences altogether.
And they're different ages and just like everything.
Yeah.
But anyways, they are still compared. And I literally, this is what I hate tearing down other women just to build another one up.
Yep. Happens everywhere you go, music industry or not. That's what we see it. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyways, okay, so my tangent is over. I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me have that for a second. But while these two women have made a huge strides in their career and have made a huge impression on the music industry continues to be male dominated. So to the average listener, this may not seem to be the case, because I think that like everywhere you hear a lot of women on the radio and that sort of thing. However, when you look at the data, which we will do for you today, you'll see that women are seriously being left out of the equation across the industry.
And I mean, it's no secret that women face everywhere in every industry, like underrepresentation everywhere we go when we compare to male counterparts. But this is huge, specifically in the music industry, and even more so in the last couple of years, which is even more rare. We're seeing typically some growth in industries and male-dominated industries, but not here.
Not in this one. Yeah, no, totally. So for this episode, we're going to be referencing the Annenberg report a lot. So I think that first we'll just define what that is, just so that you understand what we're talking about. So as the world's leading think tank studying diversity and inclusion in the entertainment industry specifically, the Annenberg Inclusion Initiative, based out of the University of Southern California, publishes data-driven and theory-based research to offer targeted insight and solutions that tackle inequality in the media. So like honestly couldn't have asked for a better report.
Yeah. It's like exactly what everything we'll be referencing it a lot.
A lot. Yeah. It has everything that we needed. These reports are considered the go-to for these studies. So we'll be diving deeper into a few different iterations of the study. There's been a few over the years. So the amount of top selling women artists in the US actually increased in 2022, but the proportion of women songwriters making any commercial impact is still very dismal. According to the Annenberg report, while the amount of women represented in Billboard's year-end Hot 100 chart, which tallies the most most commercially successful songs of the year, that number jumped 28.7% last year to a total of 30%. So like that's actually a very significant jump.
Yeah.
But only 14% of songwriters represented on the chart were women, and a slight decrease from the 2021 statistic, which was 14.3%. So the 30% representation, however, marks a new high for the amount of female artists on the year-end chart over the last decade. But the statistics for female songwriters and producers have largely stayed the same over the last 10 years. Of the 200, I know, you're like, great. Of the 232 producers represented on the year-end chart, only 3.4% were women, and one producer was non-binary.
Wow.
Yeah. Since 2012, the beginning of the reporting period for the Annenberg report, so they didn't have, obviously, reports before then, the amount of female songwriters represented in the Billboard year-end chart has never been higher than 14.4%. And that was in 2019. The peak amount of female producers represented on the chart also came in 2019, when 5% of producers on the year-end list were women. I can't, like, what was happening in 2019?
I know.
I can't even.
What was happening?
This feels like so long ago.
But producers, I mean, I don't know if I can name any producers.
No, but I mean, like, that was also when the song, like, that was also when the artists.
Yeah, true.
Only 30%, but still, yeah. So the Annenberg report suggests that while gains made for female artists represented in the charts are promising, which is good, women behind the scenes still face major barriers to inclusion. It suggests that women are stereotyped in terms of the types of songs and genres they can create and the roles that they can play. They are sexualized, and their talents and experiences are discounted. Great news. And that the programs that support women to build experience in music may be vital to increasing the participation and success of women in the industry, which, yes, 100%. We need more support for sure. For women songwriters and producers, the needle has not moved very far for the last decade. In particular, women of color are virtually shut out of producing the most popular songs each year. Yeah. What? We know there are talented women from all backgrounds who are not getting access, opportunity, or credit for the work in this arena. Also, and sorry, sort of a side note, but can you guess what were the top 2 most valuable things for women either trying to get into the music industry or stay in the music industry, like that were noted in this report? The top 2 things.
To help them stay?
Yeah, to help them like succeed.
Connections?
Literally networking and mentorship.
There you go.
And those are the exact same things that we discussed in the entrepreneurship episode and what we do at Raise Her. So anyways, right. over to you.
So these are discouraging, to say the least. For many women artists out there, like, to think about things declining and really not moving in the last 10 years. It's pretty hard it's a hard pill to swallow. So even those though who are starting out, knowing the statistics of male versus female artists it's a letdown. And I mean, but at least, there's lots of room for improvement. So if you're ready to make some change, this is the place to do it. And there are a lot of powerful women artists right now that are slowly paving the way for the newcomers out there. So, if you're looking for some strong female role models, they are there. There may not be that many, but they are dynamos out there. So you have some hope.
There is a little bit of hope. Yeah, exactly. In addition to being underrepresented and underrecognized, women in the music industry face barriers of advancement because of their gender. In that same Annenberg report, 39% of the respondents reported being stereotyped or sexualized by their male coworkers. Of 75 respondents who worked in the studio, 39% reported being objectified. 25% were the only woman in the room, and 28% were dismissed. So like ideas being dismissed or a lot of different things. A 2020 study released by Annenberg surveyed 401 women creatives and found that 64% named sexual harassment and objectification as a major challenge women face in the industry.
Wow.
64%, which means obviously people are seeing it and experiencing it and everything.
I believe it. Especially after our Christmas holiday song episode about just how much the music industry is based on objectification and what you look like and sex selling, and that's kind of what it's built on.
Totally. Yeah. So it's it's obviously just perpetuated then as well.
Yeah.
So the inaugural Women in the Mix study, which presents the results from a survey designed to examine the socioeconomic landscape of women and non-binary people working in music industry across the United States. So again, a very perfect study for us to look at, surveyed 1,600 women and non-binary people to identify trends and their shared experiences. And the study demonstrated the prevalence of discrimination in the industry, as 77% of respondents said they were treated differently because of their gender.
Wow.
Yep. And 56% believed their employment in music was affected by their gender.
Wow. In 2024.
Yeah.
This is the stuff you go back to when people say there's no gender inequality today. This is the studies that you hand over.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just send them DM them our episode and that would be great.
Exactly. So not only are women in the music industry underrepresented, they're also underpaid. Shocker.
Good.
Statistics published by Music Business Worldwide shed some light on the matter of the pay gap in the music industry, where in the United Kingdom, the statistics show that women artists under Universal, Sony, and Warner's UK companies make almost 30% less money than their male artists within the same companies.
Oh my God.
30%. And with an average of making 70 cents to every dollar that a male makes. So
that's way lower than what just the average regular old, pay gap is.
Right. And overarching it across all the industries. That's almost half, really.
Yeah. That's not good.
The bigger letdown was finding out that women artists also earn 88% less in their bonus. I don't know if this is a bigger letdown, but this is another letdown that they earn 88% less in their bonuses compared to male artists.
That's really disheartening.
This is where I wonder, because it's very individualized. This is your everyone has their own talent and it's quantified differently.
Yeah, true.
So it's I feel almost more subjective to compare, but what makes a male's voice more valuable than a female's, right?
Right.
How do you ever compare how do you put a price on a voice or a talent or a art, right?
Well, and it's just their overall commercial,
right? But it's also in general, why are women's voices less valuable? Is it just because we're expected to be able to sing, because it's not a newfangled thing? Men should it's cool if a man can do it, but a woman, all women can sing lullabies to their babies. I don't know why that is.
I just feel also women, though, I mean, this is very generalized, but women also have to look the part.
Oh, 100%.
Whereas there's some dudes out there who
So looking at the same Women in the Mix publication, here's some other big takeaways from the study relating to pay inequities and the pay gap. So women feel overworked and underpaid. Wow. 57% of them have 2 or more jobs.
Oh, God.
24% are working between 40 to 51 hours per week, and an additional 28% are working over 50 hours a week. So they're working their butts off. They're working several jobs just to make ends meet. And they're like
Still
seemingly famous and celebrities, but still having to work several jobs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Music creators and performers see the lowest income and highest dissatisfaction with career progress among the various job classifications in the study. And of the respondents that identified as music creators and performers, 48.6%, almost half, said that they made less than $40,000 per year. How are you even living on that? Like, I mean, in this economy, that percentage is roughly 15% higher than within the entire respondent pool.
Oh, God.
And approximately 57% of music creators felt that they should be further along in their careers compared to those working in music education, about 48.5%, or the event, tour, production, and management promotion businesses, or the music business in general, and the music and media technology. So there's so many different like sectors within the music industry. But yeah, that one area is just
booming.
Not creators specifically, where really that's like the nuts and bolts of success of a song is the creators. I believe.
Yeah.
So non-binary respondents also face heightened levels of adversity, where they are less satisfied than respondents who identified as women by a 16% margin.
Oh.
They were twice as likely to make less than 40% per year and felt less comfortable in the workplace by a margin of almost 18%. And this is a common theme we're saying in pretty much every episode we have when we look at the intersectionalities of people and gender expression. And every time it's like exponentially higher for people of different genders than male or female.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And the data and the statistics like very clearly show that women have a harder time breaking into the music industry and are paid less than men and are provided less opportunities for recognition and advancement, those bonuses that you talked about. And not only that, but women in the music industry often face more severe gender-based discrimination because of the prevalence of relationship-based hiring. So like if you know somebody, the gender stereotypes, and the practice of underpaying inexperienced artists, or like I would say arguably also like inexperienced kind of like anybody, which is the like the interns of the world and all that kind of stuff. So the music industry has traditionally relied on informal hiring procedures based largely on personal relationships, and it can be quite difficult for outsiders to get their foot in the door. And one kind of anecdotal story is one woman jazz musician reported that people would often hire their male friends over equally or more skilled women. So just because it's fun. Their bro.
A fun place to work.
Yeah. Their bro will be there, but not someone who can actually like do the job effectively. The Annenberg data show that men are disproportionately placed in positions of power in the industry, and they hire men at a disproportionate rate. This boys club, quote unquote, mentally fosters this chronic underrepresentation of women in music. And I think that's like across all sectors, but I think probably still very prevalent and encouraged in the music industry.
Well, on top of that, women in the music industry also battle the stereotypes, the common stereotypes that were unconscious biases and microaggressions that are often used as gender discrimination. Women in music report being given work that is rooted in gender roles, such as the cliche of women possessing good communication and people skills, and men traditionally being seen as the decision makers and the assertive ones. And additionally, women are often forced to work in uncomfortable or hostile work environments, as 39% of Annenberg respondents were sexualized, objectified, or stereotyped at work. Women already face tremendous barriers when it comes to entering the industry in general, which are already worsened by the prospect of facing harassment or mistreatment in the workplace every day. And it's just like they almost, because there's so few women in there, it's like, well, I'm so lucky to be here. I'll just have to deal with it to stay, right? And that's so unfortunate.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely wild. Another study we came across in our research for this episode underscored that while 81% of industry professionals and creators believe that discrimination exists in the music industry, just under 60% believe that gender-based discrimination is a major problem in the music industry. So they're like, it's not that big of an issue.
Yeah.
And unsurprisingly, gender is a major factor that dictates the belief in gender discrimination. So,
of course.
Yeah. So while 73% of women and 83% of non-binary individuals believe discrimination exists in the music industry, only 39% of the men surveyed believe the same. And because of these thought disparities, we thought we should bring in someone with real world experience to chat with us. Okay, so we are so excited to have Katie Sahlu joining us today. Welcome, Yay! Katie. So let me tell you a little bit about this fantastic woman. She is a Canadian Hot 100 songwriter with an honors diploma in entertainment business management from Metalworks Institute of Sound and Music Production. She has worked with various recording labels and agencies while based in Toronto. She has served as a Juno Awards judge and has been a factor juror for a number of years. She enjoys dedicating time to consult with artists to help with grants, marketing, songwriting, beat selection, and the list goes on. And since moving back home to Saskatchewan, she has completed a Master of Public Policy degree from the University of Regina and has since been working in regulation. So like when we say she's qualified, people, she's very, very qualified.
And she's from Saskatchewan.
And yes. And she's from Saskatchewan. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me. It was a pleasure to get the invitation.
I'm really looking forward to this because I know that you're going to have some juicy stories to tell. But as we do with all of our guests, we want to start with some rapid fire questions just to like get the ball rolling.
Okay.
We say they're rapid fire, but they tend to get very deep anyways. So just ignore that.
Okay.
Okay. But first question, best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Oh, that's a good question.
Like, really quick, so fast, just roll off the tongue.
And I actually have a rapid answer.
Okay.
The best piece of advice I've ever received is do it scared.
Ooh. Good for the scaries as well.
Do it scared.
That's got to be our tagline now.
I like that.
Once I heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, like there's no excuse. Like there's no reason not to do something. Everybody who's become an expert was a beginner at some point. So if there's something that you want to do and you feel fearful of it, do it scared anyways. And at some point, the fear will go away. So I think that's my answer to that question. That one I had on the tip of my tongue.
That was good. I like that. Do it scared. That is, we're going to maybe take that now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You have my permission and theirs too.
Copyright. Okay. Perfect. Okay, second. So earlier in the episode, we talked about the Taylor Swift Beyonce beef and how like the media pit them against each other because they're women, because there can only be one woman who's really good at her job. So our would you rather question is, would you rather have the impact of T Swift or Beyonce?
Beyonce.
Beyonce.
And I say that just based on longevity. I don't discount Taylor Swift's impact and the success of her career. Am I a fan of her music? No. Do I know the words? Yeah.
Of course you do.
Will I sing along? Will I sing along if it's loud enough? I will.
Yeah.
But just thinking of like my own life, we've had Beyonce since we were kids. Like we were doing like air bands to her stuff in elementary school. So just based off of that alone, it's Team Bayhive. Has to be.
Yeah. I mean, also like when we were talking about the Taylor Swift and Beyonce, when I was doing this research, it was like they couldn't be more different.
Oh,
like,
I know.
Totally
and it's even
in
in age, like not even in like career span, but just in age. And I'm not sure why that's become such a like point of contention to see who's better than who. I never understood it, but timeliness makes sense. They're both doing big things at the same time, but I don't think that there should be a comparison. They're both great, so it's not an either or thing to me, anyways. But
no, just because they're women, I will. Yeah,
leave it at that. Yeah.
Oh, I know it. Okay, and last but not least, and we ask this to everyone, but what is your scary? So, like, what's the thing that like keeps you up at night? What scares you? What propels you to keep going forward? What makes you do it scared?
I would say, not leaving an impact, like not having made some sort of change, not having driven change in some way. And that can be like on an individual level with just a friend or a family member, or on a bigger scale, like in terms of community, but not having any meaning to, the time that, I spend on earth and the time that I spend working in my active years, I would say like I want the time that I spend in the work that I do to be memorable. And if it's not, then I'm just like, or if there's a chance that it's not, I'm like, well, what a waste.
It's your legacy, right?
Exactly.
That's when you're gone, that's what people are going to remember
you by. And that's really the key. So I think I sometimes get fearful, like, okay, am I doing enough, or am I doing enough heavy lifting for the people around me and in the groups that I'm in, that when I'm gone, they can say like, this is what she did and this is what she was known for.
I love that. I think also because, you choose to, well, not necessarily everyone can choose, but like you're taking time out of your life that you could be spending with your family and your friends and your loved ones and your son and everything, and going to spend those daylight hours with people. So you might as well make sure that there's like a good impact there. And and it's worth your time.
That's right.
Okay. Incredible. Well, now we're going to, get into the real stuff. As we
All
say.
right, here we go.
So I'm going to pass it off to Sky to lead these ones.
All right. So our first hot question for you is, can you share some stories, some experiences you've had concerning specifically the gender pay gap in the music industry? And how have you navigated and observed those challenges throughout your career?
Yeah, so we were talking about this, a little bit earlier. And just PSA, before anybody comes into the comments and comes looking for me, okay, these are my own personal experiences. And please don't extrapolate this to, a wider audience or, industry setting. But the music industry is an industry just like every other. And also they call it, the music business. It is a business just like every other business. That being said, the same issues that plague every other business that lead us to conversations like this plague the music industry. The same kind of social faux pas exist in the music industry that exist everywhere else. Don't talk about your salary. Don't have conversations with other people about what you were offered or how much you make or what type of work you do. So in that sense, there is not a ton of transparency in my experience because, the time that I was starting out, you're just happy to be there.
Right.
Right. And you
thankful for the opportunity.
Thankful for getting paid in experience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Especially when you're first starting out and, you might be an intern somewhere or you might be on a placement from school and you build from that. And I'm not discounting those experiences. And I think they're valuable to a point. Even the time that I started in the music industry, which would have been about 2009, we were already seeing a decline in music revenue. That was the era where we were pretty much removed from physical sales and we were getting into digital stuff. So the money that was coming in was different than the money that was coming in 10 years ago when it was all of us rushing out to HMV in the Cornwall to buy our favorite CDs when we knew that they were coming out.
Yeah.
So it is not a particularly lucrative industry, and that is for artists and creatives and the business people alike. So I think anybody at this point who enters into that realm is aware that it is not a big payday. It's not a big paycheck. You're not about to hit 6 figures in 3 years like you would if you were, a petroleum engineer. Right?
Yeah.
So that being said, not being comfortable to have those conversations with others and to say like, hey, okay, how much are you making? Okay, this is what I do. This is how much I'm making. Knowing that it was tasteless or a bit uncouth, just like it is in every other industry, kind of keeps you a bit isolated in terms of realizing like kind of where you stand. But the overall atmosphere and the overall perception from everybody was just like, we're not making enough money, but you're compensated by your passion, right? Because you like what you're doing and you want to be there and this is your dream. So yeah, will you take $400 a week? Yeah. Right? Because that's what you want to do and you're interested in it. And I'm not saying that that's a bad trade-off. It's not.
Yeah.
If you love what you do, then you might be satisfied with that. And at the time I was, and it was 2009, like we're talking, what is that? 15 years ago now at this point, where rent
and also doesn't seem real.
I know.
50
right?
years
I
ago.
know.
5 years ago.
It's a stark realization, but things were different at that time,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Like things cost
A lot less.
Yeah. So you might have been able to make it. And, at that time I was 19, so I could live off of whatever. I can't even remember what I was eating at that time. And I swear my mom had a conversation with me. And and she's like, how did you survive? And I'm like, I don't know. What did I eat? Because it couldn't have been these grocery prices.
No. Oh, God.
No, there's no way.
Not a real vegetable for
So,
sure.
Definitely not. So either way, I'm here. So I made
Yeah.
it. I survived.
Yeah.
But the same things that exist, across the board for women existed in the music industry and at that time. So you kind of observe that you're probably not getting paid as much as you should, but you love what you're doing. And this is something that you're passionate about. So like I said, you make up for it in terms of your fulfillment, which I did. But I think there was a general understanding that you're being severely underpaid. And you just chalked it up to the fact that, well, the industry is shifting and the revenue streams are shifting. And this is just the way that things work. Things are changing. And if you want to be a part of the evolution, then you better suck it up.
Were you ever, just to go off
Yeah.
were you ever privy to the numbers? So like if you wrote a song, how successful it was and what the numbers were bringing in, to know then what fraction of that you got paid?
Yeah. So when I hit the Hot 100, we have an organization called SOCAN, which is responsible for paying out the royalties for broadcasting. So if your song gets played on the radio, you will get a percentage of how much airplay you've got. Okay. And they've quantified it into a dollar value. Okay. That includes music videos, which were popular at that time, not so much anymore. And I believe at that time, in terms of radio spins, I think it worked out to less than $1. And that was in 2009.
Oh, okay.
And SOCAN pays you quarterly. So at the peak of the song performance, I was making, a couple $1,000 every 4 months, sometimes more than that. And it was funny to see how the trajectory worked. It would peak in Canada and then it would peak in random European countries.
I love that.
And, you just wake up and check your bank account and you would see some money. But is it fair? No, because you have to think about the splits. And it might not be anything gender related, and just the way that it works in terms of when you make a song, you've got to split everything. If you're doing it the right way, before there's ever any money made from the song, you need to split it between the songwriters and the producers and the publishers and the record label, right? So there's a bunch of pieces of the pie that got to get split up, and you better have that shit sorted out before any money comes in.
Yeah.
And I didn't, because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. That song just happened to pop. And then we were all kind of working backwards.
Right.
But there's a lot of factors that go into the money that comes from radio play and music video play. So in terms of pay in that way, you find often that the artists are stiffed, or the songwriters are stiffed, or the producers are stiffed. Like somebody in that pie is not getting the piece that they deserve. And it's not a fight that everybody has in them, right? Because sometimes you've got to go to lawyers and you've got to argue with everybody who's involved to get what you deserve. So yeah, Pia, that's the moral of the story, is please sort that shit out.
And is that for every song you do? Yeah. Like every time there's a different song, you have to go through a contract of...
You know what? I can't say that it would necessarily be a contract for each song, but there is an agreement. There would be an agreement on how much each person who's involved in the creation of that song makes. A lot of times you would think like, okay, well, X artist sang the song, so it's super popular, they're getting a ton of money off of it. But you've got to think about who produced it.
Right.
You got to think about their manager. You got to think about their record label. You got to think about the people who wrote the song, because a lot of times the songwriters and the producers did all the magic and the artist just went in the booth and basically sang karaoke of what the songwriter demoed. Right? So should they get the biggest chunk of the pie?
Right.
Most likely not. But on the flip side, maybe they should, because they're the one who takes the song to new heights. Nobody's listening to it if it's just the songwriter's name, right? They're not a known star or a known and established artist. So there's a lot of things that go into it on the back end, and
so many factors.
And you know, people don't really think about those things, and you don't think about it unless you're in it.
Yeah.
And in terms of like gender roles, we see a ton of female songwriters who are writing songs for other artists, and then you just randomly pop up on Twitter and then you'll see like a huge thread of them complaining like, hey, I haven't been paid for 25 years.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Or this song, like I didn't get any royalties even though it's my voice all over the record. And you're surprised because you're like, you know, how does it get to that point? But
it's like some Milli Vanilli shit right there.
Exactly. And it's just like, it's not anything, again, that is centered on the music industry. What we call that is people taking credit for women's work, and that happens everywhere.
And like the erasure of women in history from so many things. Yeah. Okay, so then in your opinion, what factors contribute to the gender pay gap in the music industry? And, you know, are there specific challenges that disproportionately affect women in terms of compensation?
I would say that a lot of it is perception, right? Like we can't possibly be as smart as our male counterparts in the room. Like we can't possibly not know what we're talking about. And if we say anything or if we object or dissent, you know, we're emotional.
Yeah.
Or maybe we're on a bad day. Or maybe we're having our period, you know, and it just gets chalked up to kind of a circumstantial thing as opposed to like a more holistic approach where, hey, maybe this woman really knows what she's talking about. And you kind of get boxed into certain roles that are like expected of you. At the end of the day, when it comes to decision making, I'll preface this by saying it's changing slowly, and I've seen that. But traditionally, the power players and the decision makers are men. Even if they're dealing with an all-female roster or everybody that reports to them is female, the people who are still in the positions of power are men. And, you know, having a ton of women work for you might feel like, you know, something to stroke your ego or something to flex for you, or you've got a bunch of girls who you can tell what to do. It comes down to just perception of women and our abilities and our capabilities, actually, is probably a better word. And when you don't fully believe or trust in the talent that your team has or in the contributions that they make and the reasons behind it, whether that's someone smart enough or they're educated enough, or maybe they just have the know-how from, you know, life experience, they tend to get overlooked and their contributions tend to get overlooked. And that takes you to a place where you have all of these great ideas, but somebody either takes them and runs with them, or they just get dismissed because of your position or because of the fact that you're a woman, and they don't really feel impressed by you thinking outside of the box. They kind of just want you to stay in your lane and in your designated role. And that's kind of the challenge that, you know, I experienced.
Okay, I'm dying to know, because you've like, it's been a little bit like generalized. Was there specifically, you talked about like, maybe because you're like on your period, or maybe because you get like, was there a situation where you did get like, you know, traditionally woman emotional, and then they like, there was, it just felt different from how maybe a man would be treated in that situation?
Yeah. I mean, well, all the time. And I wouldn't say that it's like necessarily being emotional. It's just more of like, you know, a personality thing.
Yeah.
Just as women, when you are, you know, outspoken and you're assertive, off rip, oh my God, you're aggressive, and you know, she's bitchy. and you better be careful. And she's a little bit crazy. But when you see that with your male counterparts, it's, oh my God, he's a shark. You know, he's great at what he does. And there's just, again, it's a difference in terms of like perception.
Yeah.
Where, you know, even we see it kind of normalized even in entertainment, where you've got that angry boss in a movie who's smashing a computer and throwing their cell phone at a wall because they got a bad call or a deal didn't go through.
Yeah.
And God forbid that is a woman. Then everything's falling apart, and she's probably not a good fit, and she's probably not a team player, and she's got, you know, probably emotional regulation issues. And it's all about like that kind of dichotomy of who's allowed to act like what and when, and what those actions mean. In terms of personal experience, I know I mentioned this to you earlier, and it wasn't necessarily about any sort of emotional aspect, but you know, I had been hired to do A&R work. So this is not an entry level thing. And about 4 months into...
Sorry, can you define A&R?
Sorry, yes. Artists and representatives. So it's essentially going out and finding new talent.
Cool.
So back in the day...
Very cool. Yeah.
Back in the day, this would be people who go to open mics, you know, or people who go to concerts and watch for the openers to look and see like, hey, okay, this is somebody who's talented. They could do something for us. And you are basically scouting the scene for people who you could develop. Okay,
very cool.
Not anymore. Now A&Rs are on the internet.
Yes.
And actually, to be honest,
TikTok and YouTube and
A&Rs are virtually obsolete at this point because people are getting famous on their own. So, and then the labels are coming to them after they've hit, you know, 2 million views or a song has gone viral. Right. So that role kind of diminished with the advent of social media.
Right.
But at that time, I had been in that role for about, I would say 4 months. And, you know, I had some feedback where they were like, my boss, who was the founder of the music label that I was working with at the time, and he just said, you know, I would like that you have coffee on my desk when I come in the morning. Oh, and if at any time I was going to get emotional, it would have been that time. And thankfully, that was email correspondence. So he was not in my face.
I would be like, is this real? LOL.
Hee hee, tee hee, me too. I would like for you to give me coffee.
Wait, actually, honestly, looking back now, it pisses me off. You know, and when you're in the thick of it and you're that young and you're just green and you're hungry and you know, you have a kind of fire in your belly to do shit, you kind of brush it off, and then maybe you just say like, yeah, you know what, I'll suck it up and I'll do it because you want to level up, you know, you want to elevate. But I remember how mad it made me because I was like, okay, hang on, I'm not your receptionist, I'm not your executive assistant. Why the hell would I prep your office for you and have coffee going for you and put a coffee fresh on your desk? Like, that is not what I'm interested in at all. And I was one of 2 women in the office. And I was the newest.
One of you has to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, so first of all you have is a Keurig. Go get it yourself. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's not like,
wow,
I have
it
to
takes
grab it.
me the same amount of steps as it would take you.
So, and you can do it how you like. And you can, based on your appetite for that day, pick the flavor of K-Cup that you want, you know, and then I don't have to get shit on because I gave you hazelnut and you fucking wanted butterscotch.
Right.
Like, you could just do it yourself. And everybody would be happy.
Right.
Don't piss me off with this.
Yeah.
But
don't waste my time.
Yeah. And I remember thinking at the time, like, this is stupid, but I sucked it up and I did it. Would I do that now? Oh, no. And if you wanted to see emotional dysregulation, ask me that on Monday.
Ask Katie to get you a coffee.
Ask me to prep your coffee in your office on Monday. You know what? I've done some inner work. I might just do it now.
You're like, I've done some self-reflection.
And I might just do it now because I don't need to rebel against anything, like everything that, you know, pisses me off. I've learned about response and reaction. But at that time, it was very rooted in a very subtle form of sexism. And I caught it at the time, but of course I wanted to be successful. So I was just like, okay, sure. Keurig it is, even though like this wasn't in my job description when I signed up, and there was actually a whole separate role for that they chose not to hire and just thought, oh, well, Katie can just absorb.
Just do it all.
Just do it all. So, I was valued enough that they expanded my role, but they expanded it into relatively low level aspects that I was not really prepared for.
Right. And that you didn't sign up for.
And you probably didn't want to do it for either.
No, I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And had you have given me some sort of like performance supplement for your coffees, I might have done it with a better attitude.
Right.
But that didn't happen.
And I think that just like comes, I mean, whether it's like getting women to do those like, what is it called? The like
secretarial work, like the admin, like
the admin.
All women have to do the notes at meetings and like send the agendas and send the meeting requests. It's like that secretarial.
So it's just like you assume that women are going to do that,
right.
But it's also like those lines can very quickly get blurred into like, sexual harassment or like anything, and women then have that same train of thought of like, I'm just going to suck it up and I'm just going to do it. And then then where does it end? And when does it stop?
Yeah.
Well, it's a microaggression, right?
Yeah,
like they're continuing and people don't call them out because it's what's been happening for so long. We've just been, well, you're so organized. You always do a good job. So continue on, right?
Yeah. Good job for being so organized. We want to make you get us coffee now too.
All the time now since you're so good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had this, speaking of kind of the weirdness of it, I had another boss at a different label who liked to eat his meals with his shirt off because he did not want to stain his shirt. I know. And like, again, now that I look back at it, when I'm like 20-year-old me, I'm like, girl, stand up. Stand up. Yeah.
Stand up. Get out.
Stand up, please.
Yeah.
But, and then he would want to eat without his shirt because he didn't want to stain the nice dress shirt that he was wearing.
Get a bib.
Yeah. It's like put a napkin.
Like all of our toddlers. Yeah. Preferably a silicone one that you can just rinse in the sink.
Rinse it and it's you can throw it in the dishwasher. It's great.
It even catches what misses your mouth.
Yeah. It's built in to do everything. Probably even better than removing your shirt, honestly.
But then he would, have me order lunch for him. Again, not something I signed up for, but have me order lunch or go get lunch, which at that point, I was just happy to get outside and get a little bit of a break. And sometimes my lunch was included. So
yeah,
that was fine. But then I'd have to give it to him in his office with his shirt off. And I'm like, I don't know if this is really a core memory that I want to have.
No.
And I can see it in my head now, and I need a moment. Because
she's gonna just have a really big gulp of wine.
I think that's the last sip.
One big gulp of wine, and then she will be able to continue on, because that is absolutely outrageous. And I mean, I know that you're not alone in that, and I know that, again, as you've said, like the music industry is not alone in that either. But I think that there's created this like beautiful sheen and like facade around it that people are like, I just want to break in. I just want to get into it. And so I'll do anything. And it turns into
that anything can be costly.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned in the music industry, as in many industries, you don't really know what other people are making. It's not something you talk about. So has there ever been a situation where you did know that a male counterpart was making more than you, or maybe a male was just treated clearly in a similar role, was treated differently? And how did you navigate that?
So not necessarily that I knew someone was making more than me, because like I said, that was pretty hush hush. And I'm also just a very private person myself. I wanted to get in, do my thing, and get out. And I never really got to a point with coworkers that I ever felt comfortable, because I knew that was just kind of a social faux pas that it's not really something that is encouraging. You never know how the other person's going to respond if you were to just say, hey, how much do you make?
Oh, yeah. Totally.
How much do you make per year? However, that being said, I definitely had instances where I knew that I was not only doing more, but more capable of people who were making more money than me.
Ugh.
And, you got to be careful with stuff like that, because you get that inclination in your gut. And you have to really rein it in because you don't want it to come across in how you interact with that person.
Right.
Right? Because it's not their fault. They didn't choose their salary. Maybe they negotiated it. But at the end of the day, they are an employee, just like you. But it can burn a little bit inside where you're just like, oh my God, like I know more than you.
Yeah.
And I could do what you do better than you. But, I'm confined to my role and I'm confined to my pay grade. And what ends up happening, at least in my case, is that it just gets internalized and you metabolize it to work harder and think that if you just do better and do more, then you can get yourself into that position. But that's not always the case.
And is that typically with men that you saw that with, or was that just with like people who had the right connections? Or
yeah, of course, connections.
Yeah.
Connections definitely play a big role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They play a big role, but everybody that, I worked with loved what they did, and everybody was intelligent and brought their own shit to the table. So I can't take that away. I can't say that I ever worked with somebody who is, a complete dummy and shouldn't have ever been there. I was very satisfied with everybody that I worked with who was on my level of management, not so much. But the people who came through the door in terms of other interns or in terms of other like lower level employees that I got to oversee or maybe delegate some work to, they were all hungry and passionate and did what needed to be done, and, still love them and I'm close with them to this day. But when it comes to knowing what other people's roles are and what they do and what they're capable of, there are plenty of instances where not only me, but other female coworkers were just like, that should be me.
Mm-hmm.
And why isn't it? No, well, I mean, we have our suspicions, but we never really knew at the time.
Right. I'm really curious. So we've like obviously talked a lot about the pay gap and like pay equity and all that sort of thing. And earlier we had shared like a lot of stats just like on kind of all the different inequities that exist for women, not just in pay realm, but like in all aspects of like how many songwriters, like the small percentage of songwriters and the small percentage of producers and like all that kind of stuff. And I'm just wondering, what has been your experience with like those kind of like overall discrepancies that exist? So like not just solely focused on pay, but like where you saw people being treated differently based on how they presented their gender.
So at that time, it wasn't as prevalent as it is now for people to be as free and as confident to be who they are, wherever they may land on the spectrum. I'm not saying it wasn't welcome, because it was, but it just wasn't the way that it is today. And it should have been.
Right.
But a lot of times, like I said, we would see women, including myself, in any sort of project or in any sort of endeavor that we were taking on, whether that's setting up a tour or doing a music video shoot, where you would see the women get delegated to traditionally female roles. And I'm not saying that in the sense that like it's a terrible thing to, go and get coffee, or it's a terrible thing to order lunch and have it set up for everybody. But if there's a difference between that and, being behind the camera and helping, position, backup dancers and kind of the meat and potatoes of the actual project, you can definitely see it in terms of those types of roles. Women at the time that I was around, we often not complained, but we made comments to each other about how men would kind of reduce or minimize our contributions or minimize our availability to work to give us tasks that were like relatively menial. Right. So instead of being able to be actually part of the music video shoot that was going on, it was just, okay, order lunch, or, hey, can you keep everybody, like all the, extras busy with, some games, or entertain them on the sidelines.
Can you babysit?
For lack of a better term, and the word babysit didn't come into mind because they were full-blown adults, right? Like, so you're just like, okay, we'll play a game of Uno, or, we'll play a game of blackjack with some cards that I bought from Dollarama just to keep everybody busy. And you don't really think twice about it because your boss is telling you that and you want to keep the shit rolling and you want to contribute to a successful project. So you do it. But then when you look back in hindsight and you're like, okay, well, I know my skill set. I know my talents. There's a lot more that I could have done to contribute to this project, but this is what I was assigned. And at the time, sometimes you shut up and you eat it. Right? Because you're just like, okay, if I keep doing these menial tasks and I keep doing the for work, you know?
Yeah.
Then one day they will see me.
Then they'll really pay attention to me.
They'll pay attention to me and they'll realize like, oh, my worth and what value I bring. And that very rarely happens.
That's always the hope and dream, is that like one day my contributions they will care about me.
And the one day never comes.
No, like I'm still waiting.
We're getting closer to like have the tools and the confidence to say something about it and address those things. But it's
but I think like something, again, like the music industry though, and I mean, I've never been a part of it and I can't actually comment on like being in it, but I imagine that the feeling is like, well, you're just lucky to be here.
Oh yeah.
So like, shut up and zip your mouth. And
there's a million other youths.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, there's a million other young kids who are dying to intern at Universal, who are dying to intern at Sony. 100%. Yeah. And that was kind of like the underlying feeling that everybody had, was that like, well, I'm happy to be here and I'm just so stoked and I'm, one in 1,000 of how many ever kids applied for this internship and I should just be grateful. And this could potentially launch me into fucking stardom. Yeah. If I use this Keurig machine enough. And you'll never use it enough. It will die before you do. Yeah.
You will wear that Keurig machine out.
Before you get a promotion, that Keurig machine will fucking pooch on you. And then guess what? You're going to be asked to go get a new one.
Yeah. You're going to have to go to Walmart.
It's going to be your job.
Buy a new Keurig machine.
And then as soon as it's plugged in, make another fucking coffee.
Yeah.
So it's not really anything that has like an end goal to it, where once you surpass that, then it's great. I get to graduate. I get to elevate. I get to level up. It's more of a hamster running in a circle because the owner has a perception in their mind of where this person fits.
Yeah. And I guess you're also totally battling against like individuals' perceptions and individuals' gender biases and individuals' like own things that they've dealt with and they've grown up with. And I mean, we've even, not like we've experienced, but like we've worked with an organization here where there was so many women in leadership, but those women in leadership were doing all of the like microaggressions to the younger women because they're like, well, I've dealt with this. This is what I did. Like, this is what I had to go through when I was coming up. So like, you have to do the same. It's like, no, we got to break those cycles. Yeah.
And that's really an important point to make, is that this is absolutely not exclusive to men.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Yeah.
It's not exclusive to men at all. There are women who still kind of perpetrate in the same way. And it can be for that reason, that it either is something that they've dealt with on their own, or it's an attitude that they've absorbed from their male counterparts. Right. And they're also in a position of probably needing acceptance and needing some sort of validation from people who are on the same playing field that they are. So if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't necessarily blame them for that, for needing to please their coworkers or please their bosses or whoever they report to. But when you're below them and you do report to them, you blame them.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, because it's like they're part of the problem, not part of the solution.
And and a lot of times you get into situations where like, oh my God, my boss is a woman, or you get so excited and then you realize, oh my God, you're worse than them.
Well, it's a whole like underrepresentation, right? And there's only so many spots. So and I'm in it, and you're not
they want
take
to
it away.
protect.
Yeah.
They want to protect their spot. So God forbid that they find you to be smarter than them, or they find you to be more capable.
You're a threat. Yeah.
You are a threat, and as I said, in any industry, they will do what they can to kind of keep you restricted to where you are. They want what you can bring to the table, and they'll extract what they can, but only to a point.
Right.
Yeah. Oh God, so sad. So tell us about the genre of music you worked in and like how that played a role in any kind of unique dynamics around gender roles and any certain barriers that females would face based on the genre you worked in.
Yeah, so I worked predominantly in hip hop, R&B, urban music. And it is still my favorite. That is still where I want it to be. And I look back and I don't regret it. But there were definitely instances where I was just like, oh my God, it's because I'm a woman. And there is still like an additional layer to this because I'll just grab my glass for this. As you guys can see, I am black. Okay, I am black.
Okay.
So that adds a particular layer of complexity to the dynamics and the type of interactions that I had with people. The labels that I worked with that represented hip hop artists and rap artists and R&B artists, any artists in the urban genre. Most labels, and I almost want to say all, but I'll just say most to be safe for now. So like I said, no one comes for us in the comments.
These are our own stories and opinions.
These are my own personal experiences. Regardless of it being like, predominantly Black genre, the executives and the decision makers were still white men. And that presented a bit of a challenge to me because I was, I had all these ideas and I knew about the background and the foundation and the history of this type of music. And I was just like, well, why are we doing this? Or that doesn't make sense. Or, hey, maybe that shouldn't be in our video treatment. We shouldn't have that in the music video. Like, these are not things that, either the collective Black culture would appreciate. And those conversations usually went over people's head. And that's okay because, again, this is Canada and we're much different in terms of demographics and, cultural depth than our American counterparts.
Right.
But in terms of experiences, I remember being at, a video shoot and I was walking around basically rallying the makeup artists because it was time for them to do makeup for the extras who were going to be part of the video. And I was stopped by a member of the artist team and a member of the management team who just looked at me and assumed I was a video girl. And I was like, kind of a compliment.
You're like, yeah, obviously.
I was like, kind of a compliment, but also like, go to hell. Yeah. I'm here running this shit.
Yeah. I'm your boss, man.
Yeah. I'm here telling you guys what to do. I'm here telling the person who's telling you what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And at the time I remember being like, okay, well, maybe it's a compliment. But then now obviously like 16 years later, I'm looking back and I'm like, oh my God, that is so insulting, right? Where they just saw me walking around. Yeah. Did I look good? Maybe I did. Maybe I did. But the just general assumption when they saw me was like, oh, okay, like, you're here to dance around in the video. And I was trying to give instructions in terms of placement. And I was trying to give instructions in terms of timing. Like, okay, you guys are going to go on in 40 minutes. We can do a dress rehearsal with a CD player where we'll just play the song for you and you guys can practice. And they weren't hearing it because they didn't see me or understand that I could possibly be somebody who was putting together the video shoot. They just saw me and they were like, okay, yeah, you're just one of the girls who's dancing in there. And, that's part of it too, right? Like there's just perception, and that perception of you will influence how you are treated.
Right.
How people respond to you and how they engage with you. If they look at you and in their mind, they see, a CEO, or they see an executive director, or they see a manager, or they see the head of a board, they will approach you in that way and they will speak to you in that way. If you fit the image in their mind of what that looks like.
Right.
And if you don't, and if they think, you're just a video girl, or you're just the receptionist, or you are just somebody kind of on a lower level, then you'll feel that in the way that they talk to you. And that was one instance, that particular video, where I was just like, oh my goodness, like, I don't know if this is ever going to get better. Like, does that mean I should, stop doing my makeup when I go out? Does that mean I should stop doing my hair? What do I have to change about me so that when people see me, they have a different interpretation of the role that I play? And I don't think that that is a safe or healthy way for any woman to feel. You should be able to show up who you really are.
Totally. Yeah.
And be respected for the work that you do. But again, like I said, it's just a different ball game when not only are you working in the music industry, but you're working in kind of the urban genre where there are distinct lines between how men are treated and how women are treated.
Okay, so you obviously mentioned that you started in this industry very young. You were 19. And I'm just curious about like, how did the fact that you were a young, Black, hot, I'm going to say hot woman, you know, I mean, and that's very objectifying, but like you are nice to look at. But how did that influence your success in this industry? Because obviously, apart from being nice to look at, you have a very, very gigantic brain and you're very capable of so many things. And so like, what was that like, knowing that you're so capable, but also having the way that you look impact how you move through it?
So I will say that just like with all of us, how we appear is the first impression, right? Like you only get one chance to make a first impression. And sometimes how you look precedes everything else that there is about you. In these spaces, especially when, you know, you're working in like urban genres where there is a distinct level of objectification, whether or not it's for entertainment purposes, is regardless. I found that there was a lot of assumption that it was either brains or good looks. It could never be both. It could never be both. And once people realized that I looked the way that I looked, but I also knew what I knew, something had to be stifled because it could only be one. And what had to be stifled was the easiest thing. And that would have been what I knew and what I could do, because that's what they could control. You can't control how I dress. You can't control how I do my makeup. You can't control how I do my hair. That's me at my house before I get into your building. But you can control what I work on. You can control what ideas I give you or I present and how they basically expand into the work that we do. You can take my ideas and you can run with them, or you can just shut them down and tell me, hey, no, that sucks, even though in your mind you know that they're really fucking good. So in that sense, there was definitely a lot of surprise where, and I say this based on the fact that I'm also a Black woman. It was very surprising for people to be like, oh my God, okay, not only does she look this way, but she's also super educated and she knows what she's talking about and she has good ideas and she's intelligent and she has something to contribute in terms of ideas. It can be overwhelmed because not only is stereotypes, but again, this perceptions that we were talking about that people might have of you before you even walk in a room, just based on how you look. They will pick and choose aspects of you that they're willing to accept, and the rest of them they're going to reject, right? Regardless of whether or not they are authentic.
Or like based on fact.
Yeah, exactly. Whether or not they're real.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was something that I had to come to terms with very early on, where I was just like, okay, well, you know, why is no one listening to me? Like, I'm telling them good things, or why did I just have this conversation with my boss? But then when we went to a bigger meeting with everybody, he spit my idea out and didn't give me credit, saying like, okay, hey, we have a roster of songwriters on our label. And I had presented at one time, like, hey, there's this one song that these songwriters wrote, and I think it should go to Fall Out Boy. This sounds like a song Fall Out Boy should sing. And at the time when I presented it to them, they were like, I don't know. Then we had our weekly meeting, and that was the first thing off the tip of his tongue. And they were like, holy fuck, this is a perfect fit for Fall Out Boy. And I was like,
I'm dead. I'm dead.
And I'm like, I know. That's why I said it. And in my head, there's still a little bit of indication because I'm like, okay, they responded positively to my idea, even though it didn't come directly from me.
Yeah.
But that is not enough to keep you like motivated
No.
to continue giving out your good ideas. Obviously, you want some sort of recognition for the ideas that you have. But I had to navigate it in a way where I understood that the way that I looked was not going to be completely accepted with my brain, with the things that I knew and the level, the education that I had and the intelligence. And again, it's all very stereotyped too, right? People weren't ready for the combination that I had at the time. And that's okay because, you know, I worked through life and went from here to there and pivoted and then did more school and then got awards and then did more school after that. And then found myself in a place where like I'm given the autonomy to make decisions and, you know, really change the way that things run in a completely different sector. But at that time, I feel like there was definitely a lot of kind of stereotypical assumptions about what I was or who I was and what I was capable of doing. And when they saw that I was much more than that, they didn't know what to do with it. So what do you do with something that you're unfamiliar with? It will cause fear and you will shut it out. Or on the flip side, you will exploit it. And there was both of those things that happened through various organizations and different record labels that I worked at. There were some that were like, okay, well, no, you're going to stay in where you're going to stay at. And this is what you do. And we don't need anything more from you. And then there were other places that were like, okay, tell me your ideas. I'll take them up higher, but you'll never get any credit for it. So I see things that still happen to this day. And like, especially like, I mean, that was a really long time ago. And I remember like, you know, I'd watch things in certain music videos, or I would watch things that would unfold on like social media. And I would say, okay, like, you know, I was part of that, or like I had that idea. Or when I would see certain singles released in a certain order, or I would see on an album listing songs going in a certain order. And I'd be like, that was, you know, that was me. And for me, that's okay. Like in my heart, I'm just like, I said that. I told them release this song. They came to me and said, hey, which of these two songs should be the single? I said this one. They made that choice and then it blew up. And it's really validating because I'm like, okay, well, look, you know, you got Grammys, you got, you know, platinum selling numbers. Like you guys were successful with that. And I had a role in it. So for me, you know, I sleep well at night. Yeah. But, you know, in terms of what that's like for maybe people who came after me, you really have to have a strong mind and like a strong sense of self so that other people don't, you know, minimize and devalue who you are based on what you look like and what you sound like, because there still is unconscious bias that comes through in your day-to-day, regardless of what you do in the industry.
That's so heavy because you obviously can't change how you look. And so then, like, and
nor should you, right?
No.
Like you're not going to downplay.
Yeah, no, I never would.
Why would you
and I think
downplay
that,
either of
that,
right?
That's just something that I feel like women always deal with. Like, so, you know, like currently I'm wearing a toque and ripped jeans. And like, if I walked into somewhere, people might be like, she's scuzzy or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, oh, but do you know that like, this is what I do? And like, these are my qualifications. Like no one would ask that. They just like look at me and they're like, you have tattoos, you must be like a, you know, whatever.
And then whatever comes out of your mouth is already starting from a deficit in terms of their like interpretation where they're like, oh, look at her. She's got a sleeve and her jeans are ripped and she's wearing a fucking beanie. And
like,
we're
first
inside.
Of all, it's 40.
Yeah,
right.
It is 40, but we're inside. So what's wrong with her?
Yeah, she's cold, but her knee gets really hot, which is why it needs to be ripped.
This is why we can't trust anything that comes out of her mouth.
No cred, you guys. I have no cred. That's such an unfair disadvantage that I think all women automatically have. Like, I've even examples of like weather women when they're like doing the weather, or like people on TV and they're like, she wore that blazer 4 weeks ago.
Didn't that happen?
Yeah.
Like super recently. And didn't she go on air to call out the people who were making fun of what she was wearing?
No, it's because she had like she kind of had like a, she just was not like a size 2, and they said that she was fat or something, right? And then she was like, you don't know what's going on, and like don't talk about people's bodies and all of these things. And she called them out, which I thought was very rad. But
I remember seeing the clip where she's like, to everyone who was concerned. And I was like, tell them.
Yeah.
And that's really what has to happen at this point. I mean, obviously if your job's not on the line because shit is expensive, but like if you are in a position where you can tell somebody off, do it with your chest. 10 toes down. Like at this point, everybody knows better.
Speak truth to power.
And if you have to tell people off and you have to tell them like, I heard what you said, I don't agree with it, that's not right, basically F off. I appreciate that because I saw the clip of her basically clapping back at them, but I wasn't sure about what actually started it.
I think they just like, I think this person had been harassing her, like, and had been like consistently commenting on
the
like
same
her
person.
That's
Oh, okay.
Yeah. but or even if it was like a different person, I feel like after a certain point, people continue to comment on your body, and you're like, okay, but like, what about what I'm saying to you?
Or
You know, like
it's
Talking about the weather. Who cares
Yeah.
what you're wearing?
Yeah, like,
and you see, that's part of it too, because like that is the privilege that men have, is like they just show up and
mhm.
whatever they want to wear, and no one gives a shit, because men don't give a shit because they'd probably wear that too, and women don't give a shit because we're not fucking thinking about that.
No, yeah,
I want to hear what you have to say. Is it useful? Yes. If it's not,
Yeah.
change the channel.
Yeah.
But for women, there's just this unspoken expectation that everything has to be perfect. Every hair better be in place,
Mhm.
and your outfit better be on point and perfectly flatter your body. And if anything is perceptibly imperfect, it is cause for fucking uproar, and it's fucking tiring.
Well, and it's like
Oh.
it can't be too fancy, but it
Oh, no,
can't
it
be
can.
not fancy
Mhm.
enough. You can't be trying too hard, but you have to try.
Try enough.
Like,
There's
like,
just
the
no
Barbie-
winning.
I know. Insert Barbie monologue now.
Yeah, we've done the Barbie monologue a few times, and yeah,
There's just no winning.
no, absolutely not.
So, well, as we close here, tell us, if you would, kind of why you moved out of the music scene and to where you are today, and if that had anything to do with the way you were treated, and like what your hopes are for the
Mhm.
music industry and the way it treats women in the future.
Yeah, so I'm definitely didn't have enough bad experiences like, oh my God, fuck this, I'm
Mhm.
out. I enjoyed my time. I know that the work that I did was impactful, and I still see it to this day. So I don't ever look back on that time in my life as a bad experience or as something that was not enjoyable. I had fun. Were there some questionable moments? Now that I'm more educated and aware of
Mhm.
what those dynamics were, as
Right.
an older woman, I can look back and be like, okay, yeah, that was kind of fucked up and probably shouldn't have happened. But in the moment, overall, I had a good experience and I was successful, and I still carry that with me till this day. However, when it comes to pivoting out of the industry, once I realized, like, hey, I have brains bigger than what we can do, what can happen in the music industry. I didn't want to just focus on other people, because that's essentially what you're doing
Mhm.
when you work there. Like,
Mhm.
when you work in it, you are focused on the artist, you're focused on the person who is supposed to be the star, the person who's supposed to be the celebrity, who you're basically working to propel into stardom.
Right.
Because once they propel into stardom, it's a return on investment, and then you get the money back that you put
Mhm.
into them when they were an unknown as an A&R at the open mic.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the full cycle. But once I realized, like, hey, I have ideas for other things. I have ideas for stuff that is not music. I have ideas for law. I have ideas for regulation. I have ideas for policy. I pivoted. And that is when I ended up saying, like, hey, let's see what happens if I start applying to some master's programs. And that's what ended up getting me my master's of public policy here back home. And I was so happy because back home accepted me. So I had an excuse to come home and be with family, which was very, very timely, because 6 months later, the world shut down.
Yeah. You're like, okay, thank God.
Thank God I wasn't in Ontario
Yeah.
when that happened. So it actually worked out really, really well.
Mhm.
And now I'm in a position where, I pretty much have flexible, not free, but free within the confines of legislation to, make changes to regulation and how we regulate members of a certain profession.
Mhm.
And I feel like that is super fulfilling as well,
Mhm.
because I get to have ideas and say, hey, this doesn't work. Hey, this does work. What can we do to change this? Or how can we enhance this? And that brings me, a type of fulfillment in terms of my like intellectual capacity, where I can say,
Mhm.
like, hey, I thought about this. Can we do something with my idea? And then I've got a boss that I report directly to, my executive director,
Mhm.
who is flexible and progressive and willing to do anything that, makes our work better.
Right. Amazing.
And as much as I loved the time that I was in the music industry, I'm also very keenly aware of the effect that age will have on you, because that's also another fun thing that women get to deal
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
when they're working, right?
Everybody deals with, but only
Yeah,
women
of
have to
course.
pay for that.
Yeah.
Right. So as much fun as it was in my 20s, once I realized, like, hey, not only do I want to make serious money that is not, 100% contingent on the performance of, music in the world. I also want to be able to drive change with my ideas and use my big brains that are not solely focused on just music, but can be extrapolated to other areas. I ended up in regulation, and it's been a great ride so far. And I've been able to, make some changes and adapt some new processes into what we do. But thankfully, in this position, all of us are women. So
I love that.
We don't really have much of these same issues that I used to struggle with. And, if you're in a place where, your colleagues and the women who are around you know what's good, you will thrive. And I think we're in a place now where if you act outside of what's expected of you, like if you're still ignorant and you're still acting like an idiot and you're offending everybody and you're just a piece of shit, you're going to get called out on it. Yeah. So it's nice that we have these conversations and that people are aware of what can and can't be said. And if it bothers you that you can't say something, then I hope you are scared and don't say it anyway. Right. And we're in a position now that these conversations are being had about what is appropriate and what's not. And as long as you are scared enough to not say those things in the positions that you're in, that's all we're looking for. So I know that was my scary at the beginning, but for anybody who's out there who is just like, oh my God, I hate all this shit and I hate not being able to say what I think, don't say it and do that scared.
I like that. Good full circle.
It came around, didn't it?
It all came nice bow on top of that. Well, with that, like, is there anything else that you want to provide listeners with in terms of like what the impact is of the gender barriers in the music industry, or like any last little bit of do this, don't do this, or like here's my quick experience,
wisdom or advice?
Yes.
The one thing that I will say, and it may not have sounded like this in the answers that I gave it, but there are a ton of successful, amazing women who are in the music industry, who are high up, who are doing what they need to do. It might have been different 15 years ago. Who knows? It might have evolved since then. But I don't want to discourage anybody from chasing their dreams or from, deciding that they want to become an A&R, that they want to become a label manager. All of those things are still possible. And there are women who are changing things every day.
Yeah.
I guess what I want to part with is don't be afraid to be that change you wish to see. Don't let what has happened in the past or historically keep you away from the goals that you have and the dreams that you have. You can still go forth and chase what it is that you want and make sure that you are living the life that you want to live without having any fear that people are going to stop you, because there are people in the positions that you want to be in who look and sound and talk just like you.
I feel like every time we ask this, they like just provide the perfect little like trailer opener.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Thank you for providing us
You're
with
welcome.
the intro for this episode. And thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom and sharing your stories. And yeah, I've learned so much. I hate that you had to go through so many things as you did. But I feel like if anyone were to do it, you were the best person to do it and to like make waves and hopefully leave an impact. And I think you did leave an impact.
For sure.
Yeah. And you know what? At the end of the day, like I said, looking back, are you like, oh my God, that's kind of fucked up. Yeah. But in the moment when you're ready to hustle, you'll do what you need to do. And that's what I, again, want to reiterate, is that if you got the hustle in you and you've got that fire, go for it, because there are people above you now. Shit has changed. It's not the same that it used to be. And people are around who look like you and are willing to help you move forward. And as long as you have your eye on the prize, use them as inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Thank you, Katie.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I always love when we have guests that really are open to sharing their nitty-gritty personal stories.
Totally.
And just expertise, and Katie is so diversified and
oh my God,
such
she's
a
so
wealth
much
of knowledge. We
experience.
actually went to high school with her, so we feel pretty lucky.
Yeah.
But just so eye-opening to hear about the music industry. I feel like it's so glamorous, and like when you hear someone who's involved, it's like wow. But obviously there's some raw, real, unfortunate things happening all the time. So you may be thinking, what are some of the key reasons that women are paid less than men in the music industry? I mean, we talked about the generalized things that we're seeing across all industries, but what are the main reasons? So the gender pay gap in the music industry, as in many, is a complex issue with various contributing factors. So some of the reasons, and I'll just kind of go through the high level. Okay. So occupational segregation, women in the music industry are concentrated in certain roles, such as the marketing, admin, and support roles, which are typically undervalued. Another one is gender stereotypes and bias, which we kind of chatted about already, so I won't get too deep into that one. Negotiation challenges. We know that women, confidence and connections are two challenges for women, so the ability to negotiate those contracts with ease and confidence is also a struggle to get those higher salaries and portions of the mix. Unequal access to opportunities. Less women in those areas, so less opportunities to be sponsored and mentored and pulled up into the tables that you need to be at for advancement. Just industry norms and culture in general. There's a lot of discrimination, objectification, and harassment, and that is part ingrained in this culture, and it's been like that for decades, histories. And so it's hard to break those cultures and create that real change. There's also the motherhood penalty that we all know too well, and this still exists in the music industry as well. They're not immune to that. Lack of transparency. This is a big one. And I think Katie mentioned it. Is just like no one really knows what anyone else makes, and you don't really share it because you can't there's not a range for an artist. Like it's just, it is what we tell you based on who you are and your brand. Age and experience discrimination is another one. And then of course, intersectionality. So overall, addressing the gender pay gap in the music industry really requires that multifaceted approach, as we always know, and as we talk about it pretty much in every episode, that involves promoting diversity, challenging those unconscious biases, fostering transparency, and really implementing the policies that support equal opportunities and fair compensation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the question is then, what is the industry's plan to change the current gender pay gap in the music industry? When looking for a solution, the women in the Spanish music industry surveyed said that the important factors in changing the current situation would be training, transparency of information, and networking. In addition to that, as history always points out, is that we need movements in order to change the current situation. So here's only a few movements from the many that we found hopeful to help create a better future for women in the music industry. So for example, in October, UK Music launched their 10-point plan to increase diversity across the business. It contains strategic actions to help increase diversity and boost inclusion at the trade bodies that represent the majority of the music industry in the UK. The 10-point plan includes supporting socially engaged organizations, diversifying their boards, and setting diversity targets for staff, like spending an allocated amount of annual recruitment budget to ensure a diverse candidate pool, or allocating a certain amount of annual training budget on a 12-month diversity continuing professional development / training program to ensure fair career opportunities for all. So I thought that was pretty cool. The next is Women in Music. WIM, for short, was founded in 1985 and is the largest and longest running nonprofit organization to advance equality, visibility, and opportunities for women in the musical arts through education, support, empowerment, and recognition. They involve women who are currently working in senior and executive positions to advocate for more gender equality.
Love it. Awesome.
WIM also organizes educational, career development, and networking opportunities to come closer to their goals. So they're doing the work that's involved. So what else can be done? Well, we are well aware that snapping our fingers isn't going to bring immediate and permanent change to the industry, but there are some smaller changes that can get us there. So pay transparency, as we already talked about, just having some more visible pay transparency and taking away that toxic culture of being not told that we can't talk about it, and getting rid of the secrecy around salary is beneficial to men and women and gender diverse people. It could even lead to people working harder to get the bigger roles because they can see the bigger picture. Just everyone understands, that we're all a cog in the machine. Job advertisements listing salaries, as we mentioned in a past episode, it's, I think in Ontario and BC, it's now legally required that they have to to list that. But going into a job knowing exactly what the pay is means that people know what they're expected to do. And finally, publish action plans with timelines. So another attempt at transparency means that not only can these industry giants be held accountable, but everyone can see which companies are dedicated to positive change for women. So what can you do? Well, whether or not you have a huge following on social media, use your voice, no matter who you are, who you talk to about these stats, share them around, talk about them, make it more visible for everyone. The more people that know, the more people who can stand against this blatant misogyny. Men and women need to unite together to spark this overdue change. So,
yes.
With that, thank you for joining us today as we confronted these terrifying but real statistics impacting women and girls. Next week, we will be diving into part 2 of our Barbie series.
Woohoo!
It's the fallout time. So stay tuned for more ways to make a positive change and impact. Together, we can make the world a little less scary for women and girls.
And be sure to follow us, as always, on Instagram at RaceHerCo and at scaries.podcast, and on our TikTok channel at RaceHerCo. And remember that change starts with awareness and action. So thank you so much for being a part of the Scaries community and making this world a little less scary for it to exist as a woman.
Bye.